Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Solomon Dacres emerges victorious at Wembley on the Usyk Dubois undercard, getting the biggest win of his career on the biggest stage against a very lackluster Vlad Sirenko, who barely fired his shots. Sirenko just looked out of his depth here, and we'll talk about it. But very comfortable for Dacres, who was coming off a loss to David Adlai. Remember, he got absolutely blitzed by Adlai in a round or so. But Sirenko tried to use what were the heavier hands from him to try to walk through Dacres, and it just failed spectacularly because he just plodded forward most of the night, round after round, and was eating shots for fun. Like tic-tacs, as they say, just kept on eating shot after shot, walking forward, not really letting his hands go, but eating a sort of barrage of punches as a reward. It literally was sort of Groundhog Day. I sort of thought, well, is he trying to make Solomon Dacres work, wear him down, and then he's going to try take over in the second half of the fight? But the second half of the fight came, and you had just little flurries here and there where Sirenko would look a little bit more urgent, put a little bit more work in, but he could not sustain it. You had Sirenko sometimes just completely square, just getting absolutely teed off on as he walked forward. It was absolutely bizarre. And I think some of this might come down to, recent years actually. You've had Sirenko increasingly turning up, and I thought 256 was too heavy for this, but looking fleshy, not fighting frequently enough, but also the opposition had tailed off in the past 3 or 4 years. Just hadn't been fighting consistently enough. And heading into this fight, I had a question. Well, where was he at? How good was he? Under James Ali Bashir, where was he going? What was he going to do? And this was a big opportunity for Sirenko after having been signed by Frank Warren about a year ago. This was the first opportunity. And obviously on a big card, he's Ukrainian, on the same card as his countryman Usyk. It was, as the commentators stated, a bit of an audition. I think they were sort of overstating that, he was going to announce himself as a big sort of heavyweight potentially, because, Sirenko's at this point, or until this point, had showed that maybe he was somewhere around top 40-ish, there or thereabouts, or a little bit lower. Dacres, we'd seen, obviously, I think, because we see a lot of English and American sort of heavyweights more frequently than heavyweights from other places around the world, just because of the coverage and how that sort of shakes down. Dacres was a bit of a known commodity, a guy with good skills, clearly, but not a lot of pop. And it didn't matter in this one because Sirenko, with his left hand and also the left hook in particular, as to say, and the right hand, which were his sort of main weapons, he landed them sparingly. A couple of times he looked like he sort of backed up Dacres or caught his attention with those shots, but just not enough. Just not enough shots in general. It was a case that Dacres was landing more just round after round. And he also wanted to finish the stronger of the two, because there was a period, round 7 or so, where the pace was slackening, but it was equal. Both these guys were throwing less than they had in the rounds before. So it wasn't like Sirenko was taking advantage of Dacres tiring. And it has been something in a few fights where Dacres at the back end, because of the work and the volume, and he moves a lot, and we saw that again in this fight, that Dacres does tire. But Sirenko just took too much punishment, too many shots, and obviously the pace was catching up with him because it wasn't fresh enough. And I don't know what was happening, because occasionally he would throw in a little bit of upper body movement or the odd feint, and you'd be thinking, where was that? On paper, this looked like this was a fight that should be relatively evenly matched, or it should be a fight that Sirenko was considered a slight favourite in. Ultimately, I guess this is why we have the fights. Sirenko, poor performance, and he was thoroughly and soundly beaten by Dacres, who needed a good win, a good performance, a bit of a statement. Sirenko, clearly in recent years, has not been getting the fights and the action that he needed, the sort of development stepping stone type fights, and he had clearly topped out. heading into this one, record of 22-0, and it was a bit padded. Let's be fair about that, it was. But also, he'd been so inactive, it was hard to really know where he was at. And where he's at is not in a good place, because he's just been thoroughly dominated by a domestic level fighter, a guy who's been plying his trade the highest level, at English level at this point. So this is a great win for Solomon Dacres, and I don't want to try to take anything away because, obviously coming off where he'd been with Adelaide, there could have been, quite a bit of risk in this fight. Could this have been something that would have set him back even further had he have lost? But shook off the loss to Adelaide, and he's come in and put in a very workmanlike and accurate performance for the most part. Not a big power puncher, and obviously was unlikely to stop Sirenko, but the thing is, he kept letting his hands go. He kept landing shots, and he was just racking up the rounds. So, very good win for Dacres. Very, very poor from Sirenko. His career is in absolute shambles after that absolutely, lackluster effort. What did you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter. Boxing_squared. I'm out.